Hello, everyone, and welcome back for another episode here on the CEO Psyche podcast.
And the Lauren of Love podcast.
Yeah, today we have two very special guests.
Yeah, me. I'm welcoming me.
Me also. So, you guys are in for a treat today because Lauren and I have been working together as mastermind partners for over 8 years.
Crazy.
We have a lot of experience, a lot of hard-earned lessons between the two of us.
Yeah.
And so Lauren's idea was to call today's episode A Coach's Tell-All.
I feel a little nervous about it, honestly. I'm like, what are we going to open up today? Because it's, when you see a coach that's been a coach for like a year or two, it's like, oh, tell me what you know. But like almost a decade, like, There's so much in that almost 10-year frame, and there's so much to unpack that, I'm like, ooh, this is going to be juicy.
Our intention is to really share some of the uncomfortable, icky, funny, hard-earned lessons, because that's the real shit. That's the shit we need to really talk about.
Yeah, everybody really glamorizes this online business thing. And you see people with like fancy handbags and flying on jets and making multi-millions of dollars, and yet behind the scenes there were all these really nitty-gritty, grueling steps to arrive in this place that so many people are inspired by, right? So I think for me, like, my heart around this is like, let's really lift the veil and be honest about all of those things that it really does take and that you really do experience on the journey.
Yeah. For me, it wasn't until I got to the point where I was already making six figures in masterminds with other 6 and 7 figure and multiple 7-figure entrepreneurs where I actually got that peek behind the curtain of the real struggles they were actually having. Mm-hmm. And I was able to sit there and go, wait a minute. It's not that they were being dishonest. It's just that they had really cultivated brands and they were dealing with very normal business challenges. Mm-hmm. But they're not necessarily sharing that when they're in the thick of it. Usually people wait until it's integrated and the wound is scarred over, and then they start to talk about it. And I remember being in those spaces going, wow, I wish I knew that these were things that they were going through, because it would have made me feel a lot less crazy about what I was dealing with.
Yeah, it's interesting because I said, wow, just kind of realizing, because that was around the same time that we started to develop our mastermind with our girls that we spent so much time with. And so, I could see how, like, you think it's just you and an isolated emotion, and then you're going through these moments where you're seeing so many other entrepreneurs navigate the same thing. So our hopes are that everybody really relates.
Mm-hmm. So where should we start? Should we start with like how we got started?
Yeah, why don't we kick that off with a little bit of our journey, because you have listeners on my show now listening and I have listeners on your show. So let's let's get everybody up to speed.
Yes. Okay. Take it away. Yeah,
okay. All right. So I was a television news producer who hated her job and wanted to quit and was having a spiritual awakening around 2012, 2014, and made the decision to quit my job with zero backup plan, because I used to follow like those bloggers that I loved, like Tara Lynn McNitt, right, and Lauren Everts, and like the Skinny Confidential, and just I saw people blogging and making all this money by just like documenting their life, and I thought that was so cool. So I wanted to do that, but I wanted to do that from an emotional place, not food and recipes, but like, or beauty products, but actually like the healing and the inner work that I have been experiencing. So I quit my job and pulled my 401k, and I remember everybody thinking I was absolutely insane. Really, my whole family was so concerned about me. They were like, what are you doing? Are you having a crisis? Like, do you need to come home? But I moved in with my boyfriend's parents, he's now my husband, and I just said, like, I will give this a year. I will give this a year of my heart. And if after a year the universe doesn't bring me a sign, I will fall to my sword and go back and get a regular job. And that never happened. And around that time, in between that first year, you came into my field, which I know we'll talk about too. And that was really supportive. But yeah, just a whole bunch of wild journey after that, which I'm sure we'll talk about. But that's how I got into the industry, was like, I want to really share my journey and inspire other people to know that they can have this journey too. And that was really the foundation. And I remember having these mastermind calls with you where you were like, Lauren, you're not a blogger, you're an actual coach. And that opened up a whole doorway of perspective for me, because at the time I was just trying to make money off of Google ads. Like, yeah, I made $2 today because somebody clicked an ad. Oh my gosh, what a time, thinking that was going to be the way. Because, like, yeah, so much about the industry standards and things have changed. But anyway, yeah, so I became a quote-unquote coach, and I started to design courses and group coaching programs, and so much has unfolded since, but that's how it all happened.
Yeah. I remember those Google ad days. Oh my gosh. What was it, like you get a penny for a click or something? So insane. And then your whole site is just filled with these banners and pictures.
It was awful. It was like a tech version of playing the slot machines, right? Like, oh yeah, finally, $3. Like, well, it was just awful. And that was really frustrating, because in the online space at the time, there was all these Pinterest blogs and these bloggers teaching people how to blog, and it was all about this. Like, that was the way to make money, was get a lot of views on your blog and get Google ads. But stepping into the industry in 2015, that was actually transitioning out, and we were going down this new path of social media marketing. So yeah, really interesting time. Yeah, so now your turn. You get us up to speed about Jen Casey's path.
Yeah, mine started a couple years before yours. I was just graduating college, and I remember sitting in my car. I was parked and I was journaling into my iPhone, because I was just feeling all the feelings about graduating and what am I doing with my life and what's my path going to look like. And I think this really was my first moment where I channeled spirit, where I just wrote out, feed your soul. And it seemed really weird. And I was like, where did that thought come from? But that kind of became my affirmation for the next couple months, and really still is. And this was in 2011. And over the next couple of months, I ended up getting into an acting conservatory I wanted to participate in. And I kind of call myself an accidental entrepreneur, because I stumbled into a network marketing opportunity where I was already doing these workouts with, you guys probably know the company Beachbody. I was one of like the OG coaches when they just rolled out this program, but I had been doing those programs since like 2004. My aunt would buy me Turbo Jam and Insanity for Christmas. And so I was doing those workouts long before there was any type of affiliate opportunity. And so I was graduating college. I knew I wanted to go all in with being in musical theater and auditioning. And I had been working at a TGI Fridays, waiting tables and bartending and stuff for years already. And I knew that I just did not want to do that. It was so soul-sucking. And I was trying to feed my soul. So I said, you know what? I love these workouts. Let me see what happens. And I started promoting on Facebook. And if you guys don't remember, Facebook was a very different space in 2011. This was actually before people would openly put before and after pictures. There was Twitter had just kind of come out. There was no Instagram. I think maybe DMs on Facebook had just come out, because you guys remember, we used to post on each other's walls and have conversations there. So it's a very, very different world, and I got a lot of negative pushback from people who thought I was batshit crazy because they did not understand how there was a possibility of making money online. And I don't know what led me down that path, but I saw the opportunity. And I was like, this is perfect. I can go to my auditions, and I can bring my computer, and I can work on my own time. So that was really the seed that began. And it just continued to, I mean, the first couple of months, my first 4 months, I made a whopping $0. And then finally my mom bought something from me. So stupid. But, you know, it took time to get it up and running, especially because I didn't know what the hell I was doing. There was no real YouTube videos at the time. There wasn't the types of courses and trainings that are out there now. So it was sort of the wild, wild west of everyone fend for yourself and figure it out. And then over the next couple of years, I started to get a lot more serious about it. And really in 2014, that was when I just made that decision. Kind of like you had your moment. I was auditioning for grad schools, and I finally completed that process, and I was like, okay, now what? Now what do I do? Okay, I'm gonna go all in. And I just really went all in with the network marketing stuff. Within that next year, things really exploded for me. I mean, I wasn't really making a ton of money because like you'd get like a $30 commission or a $50 commission, but I was like being celebrated for all these big sales ranks and all this cool stuff. And yeah, that was really around like that end of 2015. I was kind of like feeling that itch. I'd been taking some online courses and programs about building your own course, and I really was feeling that misalignment with the company, and was watching like Chalene Johnson videos and Brenna Burchard videos, and they're talking about you can create an ebook and you can make $100,000 by selling it for X amount, and you can do an online course. So I just got the bug, and I saw this vision. And then when I told my family I was like quitting waiting tables to go all in with this, oh my God, even I had a very old therapist at the time, and she was very concerned.
Really?
Yeah, she was like, oh, had zero poker face. She had no idea what the hell I was talking about. And I think most people at that time still kind of thought it was a scam. There was no influencer world happening. And yeah, all of my friends were kind of mocking me behind the scenes and sometimes directly to my face. My parents were very concerned. And Mikey was the only one who really like fully supported me and just trusted in whatever. That's my fiance. We've been together for almost 17 years now. So yeah, then that was around the time when you and I started working together. We reconnected because Lauren and I, if you guys don't know, we actually met in 2007 on a subway in New York City with our moms going to an audition for a musical theater program.
And then we never talked again. We were like, oh, you know someone who I know. Okay, bye. And like, that was it. And then, yeah, we just kind of reconnected. And I think that time together was really supportive for me. I mean, I remember we would get on 6-hour-long calls and just try to teach each other what we knew to really bridge the gap of time, because there were things that you knew how to do that I didn't know how to do, and vice versa. Yeah. Whether it was like building an email list, or what even is a CRM, or how do you make a Canva graphic, and you know, we spent so much time trying to figure things out together. And I think that really allowed me to feel supported, to like have somebody. That's why I feel bad when, you know, people come into Wild Wealthy Feminine program, or you know, any other of my business spaces, and they're like, yeah, I don't have a friend who's building a business. I see all these people on the internet and I want to be a part of that, but like, I personally don't have someone as an ally. And I'm so grateful I did, because there were so many moments where I literally wanted to call it quits, would look for jobs, would freak out. And then you would make a little advancement, and then I would, in your business, and then I would say, oh, well, she did that, I can do that. And then we would advance together, whether it was our following count or our first clients or the next steps. And that was always just really empowering. Yeah. And yeah, that's it. That's what I gotta say about that. That was cool.
Well, it's crazy to look back on too, because before you and I started working together, I had a bit of community, but there was nobody who really was as interested in doing it as full time and as full out as I was. And I look back now and say, okay, well, I was a young single woman with nothing to lose and everything to gain, and a lot of them had families and other responsibilities and things. So it was very hard to find somebody, because I would very quickly outpace people. And I would show up to mastermind calls with other people, and they would have done nothing, and then I would sort of end up coaching them and teaching them. And then they would feel bad, and they're like, I don't want to take any more of your time, you know, whatever. So it was such a like godsend, just a breath of fresh air when we started working together, because we really were able to. It was a meeting of the minds, like it was a true mastermind. We were able to really support each other, which was so beautiful.
Yeah, and you know, I think a lot of people talk about, like, I guess two things are coming to my mind that I want to speak to is like, when you're not supported by your peers or your community or people around you, like, that's not a reason to not go after what you want, right? And I think that's really important to say, because while it does make things scarier and more complex and a little bit more sensitive to our egos and our emotions and our confidence and all of those things, majority of people who are stepping into industries like this that are kind of a wild west. Like, they don't have support because people around them are like, I want my children to be safe. I want my friends to do what I'm doing. I don't want them to break away. So it's just a normal thing to have people around you judging what it is that you're doing. So I just really feel called to just presence that, accepting that. And then also the other thing that was really coming through on this was this concept of like, y'all think it's hard and competitive and like clueless now to like play the game of influence. Just fucking go back 4 years. Like, it was, for us, 8 years. Like, it was really, really unknown. Nobody knew what they were doing, right? So I got into the social media landscape right before, I think it was like 3 or 4 months before Facebook Lives were a thing. And so everybody was using this Facebook Live strategy, right? It became the strategy that we ran with until it didn't really feel good anymore. And then Instagram got their stuff. And so there were so many things we had to learn and figure out because the industry didn't exist the way it does today. I mean, what are your thoughts and feelings on that?
Yeah, I mean, it's a game of adaptation. And Gary Vee talks a lot about attention, that really our entire business, if you are building primarily on social media and you're wanting to be more of an influencer, you're trading attention. And that attention and where people are showing up and what type of content that they are consuming, that is always changing. So, I mean, what you and I both talk about with our clients when we're working with people in business is just really finding that core essence of your message, because then regardless if you're doing a Facebook Live or a podcast or a reel or a graphic, the same essence of your message is able to come across. And I think a lot of people, especially right now, are getting a bit caught up in the technicalities of like the perfect reel or the perfect this, which, yes, we still want to learn those things. I don't know, maybe this is a totally different conversation, but like with AI, I feel like a lot of the cultivation of message and copy this is going to be a really interesting development, because we had to work for it. We had to figure it out. We had to test some shit, man. We had to like write some really, really bad copy. And now there is an advantage that people are going to be putting out better and better copy, but you know, really finding your unique voice, if you're handing that off to AI, I think it's gonna hurt people in the long game.
Yeah, I don't use AI. Like my team sometimes will be like, hey, like we're trying to design a color palette for like a wealthy program. What are the colors that represent? And then it'll give back that info. Or we'll say, you know, we'll put like a video through Otter AI, which is like transcript, and we'll say, okay, here's the transcript of a video, give us the bullet points so that we can use it for something else. So for me, like my strong point of view is I'm never going to hand off my creative channel or my voice to a robot. I'm going to use robots to do the things that take up time so that I can be more dedicated to my creativity. And that, I think for me, like when I look at my business, the thing that has always really allowed, I think, both of us to really grow fast is that creativity has always been a priority and a value that we've been harnessing and mastering in our work. And for some people it's not. It's like, oh, strategy, money, marketing, like, you know, like all the bullshit. But for us it was like, no, how can I creatively express, you know? And that's really played to our advantage, I think.
Absolutely. I think too, we've always been really excited about the work that we're doing long before anyone else gave a shit. And I'm sure you have stories like this too. I remember when I was working at Fridays, I had really gotten into personal development. There were no audiobooks, there were no podcasts at the time. So I remember actually, well, there was one audiobook I remember listening to. There was an audio program where Shalene Johnson said that she just decided that she liked reading. She just changed a belief just like that. And I went, I'm going to do that too, because I never read. And all of a sudden I became this avid reader, buying all these books and actually finishing them. And there was one guy who worked at TGI Fridays named Richie, who was a big Tony Robbins fan. He had read a bunch of the old school money books about money manifestation. And I used to chase him down. It would be a busy Saturday night. There's chaos exploding in the kitchen. People are screaming out orders, and I'm chasing him around to the beverage station. And he's like, Jen, I love you, but I have to go to my tables.
Oh my God.
But he was the only person who would really humor me, who would engage in a conversation.
But you were so hungry for that knowledge.
So hungry for that knowledge.
Yeah.
And also, hungry to share it with someone. And I think going back to what you said about Facebook Live, when that came out, I used all of my theater training, all of my years of passion. I just hit that stage, and within a couple weeks, people were like, how are you doing this? Can you teach me? Blah, blah. Like, and that just exploded my business because I was connecting with people who actually wanted to have these conversations, who were responding, who were engaging. So it was just so much freaking fun.
I think this is like a really important point too, that I mean, there are many things that are going off in my brain as we're talking. Like, oh, this and Tony Robbins and blah blah blah. But like, so the first piece is like, I always thought that I would get to this place where everything was created, and then I could sit back and relax and just run things, right? Be like, okay, yeah, finally, my lead generation is created. I have my freebie. I'll promote that. I'll run an ad to it. This will all be blah 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 blah. Perfect. I'm saying blah 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 a lot, but it's appropriate. But I realized that like that was an utter disappointment to get to that place, because when you're in an industry that is constantly innovating and constantly changing, you have to be really hungry for your own personal growth. You have to be really hungry to express your creativity, and you have to be really accepting of the fact that you will always have to be doing both of those things, right? You'll always have to be finding new ways to be creative and innovate. And Tony Robbins talks about that. He says, you know, a business without innovation is going to die. Like, look at Blockbuster, right? Like, bye, like, didn't innovate. So I think it's really important, like everything you're saying, there's like so many pieces of this that are really necessary to talk on. But the other thing that was kind of coming through for me was that when you had these moments where you were just following your intuition and being like, I'm gonna do Facebook Lives because this feels good and this feels like something I want to create. From there, people began to come up to you and ask you, how did you do this? How did you do that? And you built your business fueling and filling like those needs that people had. And this is, I read this in, Matt was telling me about the owner of Zappos. Do you know the story of the owner of Zappos?
Possibly.
Oh my God. This dude, when the shoe company, when he created the website, he just took random photos of shoes. He didn't have a stock. He didn't have shoes. He just put a bunch of shoes on the internet with photos, and people would order them, and then he would go to the local department store and buy them, because he was learning what people wanted. So he didn't go all in into producing this big inventory. So I think about that a lot, of like, my whole business journey has been weaving a castle layer by layer, not knowing what it's going to look like. And I think that that's so important, to have that development of trust as you are building something, to say, oh, I'm going to show up because this feels good, but then this might lead me to something else, and then someone else might say something, and then I'll go to something else, and I don't know, that's just how I built everything. And I think I see that in you as you're sharing that story. So anyway, I just wanted to mirror that. Do that. Let's all do that.
I love it. Makes me think of Madonna. People talk about all her reinventions and rebrands over and over and over and over again.
Evolution, baby.
Yeah, you have to.
You got to. Wait, but can we talk about Tony Robbins? Because this came up too. So for context, when Jen and I were like mapping out this episode, there were things that we knew we really wanted to talk about. And we had this realization that our big shifts in entrepreneurship were associated with Tony, right? So let's talk about the journey of that, if we may.
Let's do it.
Yeah. So, okay, I'll go first. So for me, you know, one of the things that I think a lot of entrepreneurs get stuck in is that they're always really hungry for this strategy. I mean, you're talking about it with your webinar and all the beautiful stuff that you do in the psyche coaching certification. We're so hungry for a strategy because we want to know this like picture perfect answer. But in my journey of entrepreneurship, I was doing that for months and it wasn't getting me anywhere. And I reached this point where I said, I'm an emotional wreck. I am not believing in myself. I'm emotional roller coastering every day, and I need to take a minute to like do my own work. And I literally had like $600 in my bank account left, booked a flight by myself to Florida, went to a Tony Robbins seminar, and that was when I realized that everything that was holding me back from creating what I wanted was actually my own shit. It wasn't strategic. It wasn't about needing to know some missing solution. It was my own inner stuff. And that brought me into huge shifts in my business. And so I think one of these tell-all experiences for me, yes, okay, I've been an entrepreneur for a decade and I have all of the strategic experience, but really actually that was developed when I had a confidence in myself to actually not be on an emotional roller coaster every day and to actually pursue and take steps and move. So yeah, I just wanted to speak to that.
Yeah. When you went to Tony Robbins, was there a specific shift that you noticed happen within you?
Yeah, there was this moment where he guides everybody through a meditative process of visualization. It was the first time I had ever done something like that.
The mirror one? The scary one?
It's, yeah.
Oh,
like,
God.
It's
the Dickens process.
It's the Dickens process.
Okay.
And for those of you who don't know, Tony Robbins' foundation of education was what really transformed my life prior to ever going to an event. I was reading all of his books, getting all of his audio programs off of the dark web. I was like stealing the downloaded files. I had no money. I was like, I gotta get this. But yeah, they really changed my life, and all of his work is actually founded on the fundamentals of neuro-linguistic programming, which he then rebranded as neuro-associative conditioning. But NLP and the process of rewiring the subconscious, that was the first time I ever got a taste of it, and it's this process he calls the Dickens process, which you can explain more about too. But basically, you see yourself as this horrible version of you, and you're screaming and crying about all of the things that you didn't change in your life, and then you release it, and then you go into the vision of what you really want to create. And that for me created such a feeling in my body that I had never had, where I was crying so hard, and it was turning on this empowerment that I didn't really know how to cultivate beyond it. It's why I think NLP tactics and time techniques and any of the hypnotic work is so powerful, because it allows you to get to these places that have been kind of consciously untouched, So that was really big for me. I remember calling Matt being like, I'm changing my life. It's happening. You'll see 6 figures. And sure enough, that year, that's when everything really shifted.
Incredible.
Yeah. What about you?
Yeah, well, first what you just said, I think what's so exciting about that, and one of the reasons why I love NLP and hypnosis and teach all of that inside of the psychic coaching certification, is because I think a lot of the Western world is very much in the mental processes, very much in the overthinking, and I have to analyze it and understand it and make sense of it, and very disconnected from the body. And I think what Tony really models beautifully is he incorporates all of those tools and strategies to help with the sort of mental processes of the NLP, and then also in order to reach an audience of 14,000 people. That was the first UPW I went to. Like, holy crap, that's a lot of freaking people. And he's just on stage for 16 hours getting every single person to jump at the same time and say, yes, yes. So he really does a beautiful job of amplifying all of the physiology components that are a very important part of NLP and hypnosis that sometimes get a little bit overlooked in other trainings. And he really has done such a beautiful job. So shout out to Tony Robbins. When I went to my first event, I was already making 6 figures in my business. I had a business partner at the time. And things with that partnership were starting to kind of fray, starting to come apart a bit. And the vision that we had at the beginning, we were very much on the same page. And as we ran round after round of our group coaching program, that vision started to kind of separate a bit. After I went to Tony Robbins, I remember coming home and going, holy shit, this is the missing piece. This is the thing that is going to not just help some of our clients get results, but help all of our clients get results. Because at that time, we were really hyper-focused on strategy, which was fine as a business coaching program. However, I started to see, after working with several hundred clients, which, having numbers like that was a blessing, because we really quickly got to see where there were holes in the programs. These patterns were emerging. So it wasn't just one person, it was like 30 people. Okay, if 30 people are having the same question, we need to update something within the program. Or at least that was my feeling, my belief, that maybe was not as shared in terms of importance of where we need to focus our time and attention. I am particularly good at spotting patterns and get very excited about that. And so when I was starting to see these little holes in the curriculum, in the coaching, Tony, I went there and I was like, this was the missing link. All of these subconscious teachings were the thing that were going to take people from kind of playing out this pattern of being the underdog in the program, where everyone else could see their enormous potential, but they were like getting stuck in helplessness and self-doubt and hopelessness and what if I can't do it, uncertainty, and constantly getting in their way, taking one step forward, 3 steps back. I wasn't sure exactly how to not just help those people, but help them in a group setting. And after learning these subconscious things, very shortly after, within 2 months, me and that business partner decided to part ways. And I went off and started rebuilding the program from scratch. And I completely redesigned it with all of these. So it took, I went and got certified myself. And then over the next year, started weaving in all of these subconscious modalities into the actual pre-recorded curriculum. And it was game changing. So that's why I get super nerdy and like fully geek out about all this stuff, because I have watched it completely change all of the how-to curriculum and actually support it so people follow through and get results.
And that was really, we were talking about this before, that was really kind of the first moment for you where you had this big energetic spiritual emotional shift.
Yep.
And perspective change, and then that shifted your 3D reality, changed your dynamics. And I think this might be a good place for us to talk about that too, because there are a lot of people, at least in my end and the clients I work with, who really judge themselves for changing direction, changing approach, having one path and then realizing it's a dead end and going a different direction. But I think that when we're on a spiritual journey and we're bettering ourselves and we're associating our development with our businesses, we have to be accepting of the fact that things will change as we change.
Yeah, when I came back from that Tony event, a mutual friend of ours, I went on his podcast and he's like, so Jen, tell me, what are you excited about right now? What's on your mind? Like, what do you want to talk about? And I was like, dude, I don't know. My whole life, everything I thought was true is like completely tilted the axis of how I thought about business, how I thought about coaching, how I thought about success, oh my God, everything. It was a total paradigm shift. And that was kind of challenging to integrate. And I do want to speak to that because I thought, like you said before, I'm going to have these things set up. I'm going to have my little, funnel in place. I'm going to have my freebie. I'm going to have my program. And then I will be able to sit back. I will have arrived. And I thought I was in a place where I had a lot of stability in my business and the rug was just about to be pulled out from under me. And it happened with me in my own process first of going, oh my gosh, I need to change my whole program. This is a program that's on track to pace $1 million by the end of the year in total sales. Oh my God, I have to rebuild the whole thing, or I desire to rebuild the whole thing. And I get it. There's some people who are like, well, I'm going to have to wait. To me, it's like once I see something, I can't unsee it. And just from that place of integrity, I was like, I can't sell this program anymore the way that it is.
I remember when Matt won, this is a funny story. When this happened for me when I was in Sedona, and I was having that realization through my own spiritual awakening, because I took this year off to just heal myself. I shut my business down for a year. And we were on track to do $1 million by the end of the year, and I stopped everything. And I was having these big realizations that I didn't want to be teaching people how to make money for the sake of making money. I wanted to teach people how to do it in an aligned way. I wanted to teach people how to heal themselves, be in right relationship with their work and their world. And I remember calling Matt, my husband. I was away, and I said, babe, I just don't want to do it this way anymore. This is what I want to do. And I pitched it to him. And his response was, well, that's a good 5-year plan. And I fucking lost it. I was like, no, this is a now plan. Because for me, it's like, and that's probably poor business ethics, right? Or maybe it's good business ethics in one regard, but, financially irresponsible, where the minute that my veil was lifted and I saw that no amount of money in the world was going to make me feel happy, that my health came priority, that my trauma was playing out over and over again, and that everything that was unhappy for me was about my own relationship with myself, I realized no amount of money in the world could fix that. So why would I create a business teaching people that making money was the most important thing? I couldn't do that anymore. And for me, that was like a big moment of integrity, but it was so hard. So everybody says it's so hard to start a business. It's so hard to walk away from something that's working and being like, no, this isn't in alignment anymore. It's hard, but it's necessary. Like, I think just as we're innovating in which platforms we use and how we create content and what reels are and what story posts are, we also have to be innovating in, and aka reflecting in the creation that we're building based on our own innovation, right? So when we grow, when we change, and when we shift, that's going to be reflected in our creativity, and it's not going to look the same. And so that was hard. That was one of the hardest years for my business. But what was what were some of the other hard aspects of this industry? Because I know we talked a lot about like community and the influencer world and all of those things, and then judgment. Like, let's maybe hold space for the validation for anybody who's listening, who's going through hard stuff. Like, these are things that are hard, and we've experienced them, and it's normal to experience them.
Yeah. I would say, kind of piggybacking on what you were just talking about, probably the hardest thing at the time that I went through was when I was parting ways with my business partner. And I haven't really talked about this publicly ever, because I just want to be respectful and peaceful in the way in which we left things. But I know this person has talked about some of these things in her own way. So sticking to the facts, we were in the middle of a launch in, what was it? It's like maybe September, October of 2017. We had already sold 60 spots into our program. It was around $200,000 in sales. We had collected, because of payment plans and stuff, $100,000. So $100,000 had already landed in our bank. And there were some conversations that happened, some ultimatums that were put on the table. And ultimately, I could see that this business was no longer viable. It was a very hard decision to make, but it wasn't actually really my decision, because this person decided that they no longer wanted to do business coaching, or that was what they had presented to me as a reason, and wanted to go do their own thing. And, you know, there were conversations about, well, do we run this last round? Let's just do it. Because there were people who literally reached out to us and said that they had cashed in. It was a woman, she had cashed in one of her husband's 401ks to be able to pay for this program. Another person sold their grandmother's jewelry to pay for the program. And now we were turning around and saying that this was going to be canceled. And I didn't know what to do. I was really fucked up from this experience, because I had so much integrity. I knew how much we had amped this up. I knew how much these women had sacrificed to be a part of this community, to be a part of this experience. Many of them had been waiting for months to get the income prepared to be able to make this investment. And we were in the middle of the launch. Like I said, 60 people in the Facebook group, already starting to watch videos, already starting to ask questions, already starting to talk about how excited they are. And then a post was made that the round was canceled. And this person, one of their family members who I got along with great, worked for us, and I got outvoted, where the decision was like, we're not going to explain why, we're just going to say it's canceled. And that was not acceptable to me, because people were like, is this a joke? Are you guys hacked? It was just like, they were just so confused, because it came out of nowhere. And I remember I hopped in the group and I made this very heartfelt video holding back tears, because I was really shaken and really upset by this. And, you know, a couple people saw it, and then before I could even respond to those messages, that group everyone had been removed without my permission. And there was a lot of things like that at the end, where like things were being deleted without my permission, things were being removed. Our entire Facebook group was dismantled when I was not home, and I'm like, holy shit, that was like thousands of dollars of leads that were just removed without my green light. And there had been decisions of like, let's redirect those people to our own groups, and, you know, we can, you know, keep this community integrity and still be able to support people in the new ways that we're going to and these new businesses that we're gonna separate into. So yeah, it was very difficult. And then this person, you know, I know that they have grown a lot in the years since. This is 2017, so in no way am I trying to say anything negative about them. There were also some choices that were made that were not very kind and really were very detrimental to my business, where there were comments being made and posts being made that were coded, but I knew they were about me. Mm-hmm. And the people who were in the tight-knit part of our community also knew they were about me. And I just really responded from a place of love. I didn't get into little back and forth stuff on social media. And it was evident because I was getting messages from our community, people saying, you know, you're really a class act. You're handling this so well. We see what's happening. We know what's happening. So yeah, it was just really hard. It was very strange to go through that and feel very isolated, and to see other people responding to those messages, mm-hmm. these posts that this person was making, like, what a stupid person that is. And I'm like, they have no idea this is about me. Mm-hmm. Some people do, but not everybody does. So it was very painful to see that, especially somebody that I consider to be a very good friend, somebody who I had worked very closely with for a long time. So there was a lot of old wounds that were being played out from my life, of feeling rejected as a child and always attracting certain types of people into my field, and having those people sort of take advantage of me in certain ways. And I was really playing out this sort of victim mentality of like not setting boundaries, and also just not reading the signs of like, maybe this is not the person that's gonna be able to hold space for your creative voice, and you know, just little things. So I, over the years, have really done a lot of healing around that, and have really gotten to a place where I have been able to learn what I needed to learn from that experience. And I truly am very grateful. It's really bizarre to say, because it's also like it didn't just affect me, it affected all of those people. We refunded all that money. We canceled the launch. People were really upset, and you know, I went and relaunched something of my own and recreated it, and was able to then rebuild it, because it was right after that Tony Robbins thing. So I was like, well, okay, I wanted to rebuild this anyway. So I guess this was like a sign from the universe that it was time to rebuild now and not in 6 months. But yeah, hearing so I remember at that time thinking about the different sort of categories of negative feedback that you can get online. And there's like the troll comments that you don't know this person, maybe they're anonymous. Those have a sting. They hit on something that's maybe a wound, but it might not take you down. But then there's like the other end of the spectrum, which are like the character attacks, where people are going for the jugular. Mm-hmm. They're trying to hurt you. They are trying to poke holes in your reputation, your integrity, your business. And that is a whole other level of sort of bullying and abuse. So, yeah.
Yeah, and I think I was thinking about this the other day, from a different perspective, but like similar on note of like, is it idealistic to say that you can build your business and never have to go through these disastrous things, right? And the way that it was coming up for me was, I have a former client of mine who's now making more than I think $6 or $7 million a year, which is incredible. But also, I worked with her very early on in her journey at the very beginning, and she has since started to work with other people in the industry who maybe are perceived in a certain way as not being necessarily in integrity. And so this person's content, who's now making this like $7 million a year, she posted something the other day about how everybody thought she was a scam artist and everybody thought she was the villain, and now she's here in her truth and serving the world and helping people. And that made me think, well, in order to make millions and millions of dollars, do you have to be perceived as a villain? Do you need to put yourself in this place? What is it about that? Is it lots of wealthy people who now are suddenly being called frauds and scam artists and snake oil salesmen? Is it because they grow too fast, right? Like, what is actually preventable in this? And this has me thinking too, because from my perspective of entrepreneurship and collaboration, I had a very high level employee in my own business we've talked about this, where she was upset by the fact that she wasn't being seen as a leader or an influencer, and she was feeling that calling but was working behind the scenes. And then we tried to make space for her, and that wasn't really what was in alignment because she wanted her own thing, right? But there was just unhealthy communication, not clear boundaries or guidelines, and she, not intentionally, but made me feel very judged by wanting to have a spiritual approach to my work and not teach heavy duty marketing masculine tactics, right? And we had this very different value system and belief system. And the more I was growing spiritually, the more she felt like that was not welcome in our business and our space, right? And so we eventually parted ways, and it was incredibly hard. And it was a, hey, I'm quitting, today's my last day, 2 hours notice, with me going to my first ayahuasca 2-week trip.
Wow.
That next day or something like that. So it was just kind of like a leave you hanging out of nowhere moment. And we both had that. We both had these experiences where somebody we've trusted to hold our visions, to hold this prayer of what we're building, suddenly created a dynamic of not being safe, right? And whether or not whose fault it was is irrelevant. But I guess I'm just kind of sitting here wondering, like, do you think as an entrepreneur, these are all great things that have happened and have developed a thick skin, but are they necessary to experience? Do we have to go through all of these really difficult, challenging things? Getting judged on social media, getting bullied, we'll talk about that too. But I mean, like, what are your thoughts on that?
I don't know that every person has to go through each one of these things. I think from a more subconscious and spiritual perspective, I think we are going to experience the things that are mirrors for where we are needing to grow. Mine was a big ass mirror all about where I wasn't holding my vision, where I was being the peacekeeper. I was a big peacekeeper. I wouldn't even call it like a people pleaser, because it wasn't about being pleasing or being liked necessarily. It was about, let me pick my battles. I don't want to get into this because, let me fight for the things I really I really want. And that's such a sucky way to move through your day. So being able to be by myself and be the main person who's creating the vision, it's like, okay, I needed to realize that I was enough. I needed to learn that I didn't need another person, because I grew up with this whole thought pattern, especially with my brother and I both being a year apart and doing theater. I really saw myself as the sidekick, and I had a deep, deep story for many years around that he was the star and I was the sidekick. He sang the lead and I sang backup. And so it's no surprise that I played out this pattern with finding a business partner who really liked being the lead, liked being the star, and trying to bring together two people who had very clear visions of what they wanted to create, good at first, and then very slowly that started to dismantle. So that was a really big learning, really big lesson for me, and learned a lot of lessons about forgiveness and about navigating the online space and rejection and negative feedback. And for a long time I was hiding. For a lot of time I was in shame. I would be very reactive if anybody would bring up her name because we ran in similar circles. I had all this fear all the time of, is she talking about me and how I was being perceived? And none of it was actually real. It was all fear that was being created in my own mind. And it really stopped me from stepping forward and showing up and sharing my voice. And I felt very, what's the word? When we were dismantling things, I felt very silenced. It was very much like we're not going to talk about this. We're not going to explain this. You don't get to tell your side. And I just didn't want to walk up to the beehive and kick it. I wanted to keep the peace. And so I kept the peace. And by keeping that peace, I swallowed all of that anger. I swallowed all of that resentment. I swallowed all of that fear, all of that shame, all of that hurt. And it simmered. And it wasn't until actually a year later, you and I were at a Tony Robbins event. I was always at a Tony Robbins event. We were at a lot of them for a couple of years. And I remember saying to you, I think I'm going to reach out to this person and just clear the air because I can't hold this anymore. And I'm going to apologize for the role that I played. And I got to the place where I was like, I don't need this person to apologize. I probably won't get that. I don't really care what they say. I just need to do this for myself. And that was the healing. That was what I needed to get to, where it wasn't just forgiving the other person. It was forgiving myself for all the things that I blamed myself for how I showed up, what I didn't do. So I do feel like for me, the lessons that we've been talking about, these were crucial lessons that really helped me develop my voice, develop my stamina, develop my backbone, develop my point of view. And yeah, they were very important for me in my own personal growth. Like karmic lessons, if you will.
I've had many of those karmic lessons, and I think, you know, I had one today. I'm like always kind of in this place of learning like the things that I need to learn to be a stronger space holder, to be a better facilitator. And I think when you sign up for this role of influencer, right, the lessons that you're going to one day hold space for in other people are the lessons that you have to move through your life first, right? That's really important. So yeah, for me, there were like many times where I felt like judged on the internet or criticized, or people were angry with me because I was really prioritizing my authenticity, my vulnerability, but also I'm human, so like I'm still kind of figuring things out and I don't really know how to do things perfectly. But I think what I've learned is that all of that has been the deepest study of compassion for myself, to be able to say that I can be an incredible leader and also still need to be led by the humblings of Great Spirit, Universe, Source, right? And like, that's okay, right? I can be that way. And I think that is like, even just circling back to that, like being called a snake oil salesman or like something like that. I feel like that's more reserved for people in the industry who are really fucking hungry for the money and make it all about the money. I feel like that's when that shadow comes up. And for me, as an entrepreneur, being able to really humble myself into a state where it's actually not about the money, it's about peace, it's about time freedom, it's about impact, it's about love, it's about expression. That's when I can actually be in right relationship with my values, and the shadow isn't as strong. I mean, that's how I feel personally, something I've noticed in my career. But yeah, we do need to go through hard things, and entrepreneurship is hard.
Yeah.
The end. End of episode. That's it.
And there's a lot of people out there like, it can be easy. And like, sure, sometimes it can be easy, but you're not gonna gloss over the lessons that you need to learn. They're gonna happen one way or another.
Yeah, easy is, oh my gosh, it's like if somebody handed me a bike and they're like, it can be, you've never ridden a bike before, it could be easy. It could be easy. Yes. But in the beginning, it's going to be hard, right? It's going to be confusing. I've been navigating that with new advances in my guitar study, and there are certain things that make me want to fucking throw the guitar across the window that feel so hard. But I also know that through that lens of hard and walking through the hard, that's when things get easier, right? So yes, it does get to be easy, but if you talk to anybody, I would pay $1 million for you to find somebody who said, yeah, it was just always easy. Like maybe Paris Hilton or something like that, right? Where it's just like, yeah, it never had issues. It was always just seamless. That's not how it works. No. So,
yeah, and watching you over the years, especially these last couple of years, you have definitely waded into some very hard conversations with a lot of feedback from people. Some delivered in a way that was more conscious, and some that was just straight up like, I hate you, you're the worst, blah blah blah. Like people were gnarly in your comment section for a couple of seasons, and it's been such an expander watching you navigate that, as hard as it was for you, to just see that, one, none of us are alone in dealing with these types of comments and these negative responses, but also just seeing how you've taken each thing, you've learned from it, you've embodied it, and I can see in your energy and in your content and the way you show up that you are not to be fucked with. Because it's like, yeah, baby, like, this is not just like a random growth spurt. This is an energetic and spiritual container that you expanded into, and the growth on Instagram and in your business and revenue, like all of it is a direct reflection of all of the negative stepping stone, quote unquote negative comments and stepping stones and different challenges that you then learn from and expand it into greater capacity.
No, thank you for saying that. Like, I've definitely walked through certain seasons where I was really activated and triggered and struggling with, you know, when someone says something about you and you don't take it personally and it rolls off your shoulders. That's such a skill that I'm not very accustomed to as an empath and a sensitive being. I generally will receive somebody's projection and have to do a lot of work to remove it from my field. And sometimes that work will take a few hours. Sometimes that work will take a few days. I've had experiences in my personal life that have rocked me for years, where still I'll think of those things and find myself clearing energy of new perspectives and new points of view. These are like what I refer to as layered experiences, right? Where it's never one perspective that you discover and suddenly you feel great and you're like, oh, fuck them. But it's like, no, there's this perspective and now I feel guilty because maybe I was wrong. And then there's this perspective and now I feel angry because maybe I wasn't. And, you know, and just clearing all these different points of view of attachment. For me, a lot of it was associated with my journey of empowerment in my spiritual work, a lot of witch wounding coming up, a lot of misinterpretation of my work, a lot of feelings of judgment around the fact that I'm a white woman and I'm practicing in shamanic technologies. That was a huge thing. And that was very, very hard to navigate because I was also still learning at the time what people were so upset about, right? Like you know, for me and for context, like I had shamanic teachers that were studied in Lakota traditions and also studied in Santo Daime traditions, and they're literally passing them to me saying, here, do this, right? Carry this medicine. And then I'm getting that ask, and then I'm being met on social media with people who are angry. Now, granted, that anger was delivered at a time where I was like, oh, here I am with these medicines, look at me, I got the, you know, and I could feel that in honesty, that part of me that was just trying to come into my power but didn't know how to do it in like a humble, grounded way. So it was coming out kind of from this place of I'm really powerful and I'm just realizing that because I'm a human being with spiritual gifts like every human being, but now I'm realizing it and now I'm like, oh my God, I want to be embracing this. I want to be like everybody I used to follow on social media that looked like they felt powerful, because now I actually feel that way. But it was sideways, you know, like it wasn't really integrated and it wasn't humbled and it wasn't grounded. And so anytime I get that hit, this is something that really helps me. Whenever I get a hit, whether it's someone being mad about my before and after transformation journey, or somebody being upset about sage in my videos, or, you know, any type of judgment, I'm always taking a moment and being like, what of this is actually truth that I'm just like not willing to look at? And sometimes it's something small and sometimes it's something deeper. But I think the more I've been willing to look at what it is actually activating within me and take ownership of that and move that and repair that, that's when I get stronger and stronger and stronger, and then those experiences don't affect me. So I often tell people, if you are getting judgment and you are getting people who have something kind of negative to say about your work, do your best to see that as an opportunity, because it is an opportunity. It is something that's going to bring you more into your aligned power, more into your purpose, and as a result, more into your success and your impact. So yeah, it's a hard thing, but I think we all go through that, and it's normal to be judged on the internet.
And it's normal to have a reaction to having people say horrible and angry and violent things towards you. And one of my friends, Sharon Jameson, who's so brilliant, I heard this quote from her first. She said, if it's hysterical, it's historical. And I love that.
Like that.
So if you're having a response to something and you're being triggered by it, you know, there are usually some things to look at, and some histories and some traumas. And yeah, just some things to potentially explore.
But the point of all that is like, you know, my teacher says this, he's like, can we just all give each other permission to fucking be human?
Yes.
Like, can we just, yes, okay, it's cool, you know, you follow these people that you idealize on the internet. How do you feel if that pressure was on you, right? Like, that's a hard standard to uphold. So if we can just all kind of humble it down a little bit and just be like, yeah, we're all real, we're all normal, we're all going through these things, it's all part of the journey, then we can kind of unify in this acceptance and create a little bit more compassion in the online space. And I think that is something that we really have to practice. Like, sometimes I will see people, when I post about my processes of being judged on the internet and what comes up for me, and I share that on social media, I get messages who are like, fuck those people. And my response is like, no, that's not the lesson. Right? It's not fuck those people, right? The lesson here is like, let's all learn to be compassionate. That's not a compassionate response. And when somebody's meeting you with a complete neglect of compassion, you never want to match that with that energy. You want to transmute it and change it, right? And be that compassionate source of like, that person's hurting, that person obviously is triggered, that person's having a hard time, like, that's not on me, you know? So I just try to really emphasize compassion and humbleness in my work, and I think that that's something that not a lot of people do in the business space. Humility, being humble, that's a hard practice in this world. Yeah.
There's something you just said about when you get that negative feedback and something like, oh, fuck them, blah, blah, blah. This is really such a beautiful lesson in entrainment, which is one of the foundational pieces that I teach in my coaching work. So entrainment is the idea that, in a coaching context at least, whichever is the stronger energy will sort of overtake the other and bring the other along in with it. And this is based on this gentleman who was looking at pendulums and grandfather clocks and noticed that even if they were all swinging in different directions, when you put them all in a room, eventually all of the pendulums would sync up and swing together. And we see this happen in the collective as well, where like there's certain movements that really pick up and get amplified, and then everybody starts swinging in that direction and swinging together, and then it gets bigger and bigger and bigger, and the pendulum
and
just
all of a
keeps
sudden
swinging.
it's like a world movement.
Yes.
Yeah.
So we have to be really aware of those things, and also just notice when you're scrolling, when you're consuming content, even not just the negative comments, how your energy is being shifted by those messages, because you may be in training to the things that you are watching and witnessing and receiving. And that is really a beautiful awareness in, okay, how do I really start to cultivate my energy so it's not as penetrable, so that I'm not as easily swayed and easily influenced, because we are not always able to control the things that we are seeing throughout the day. And are you able to hold that? Are you able to hold your energy? Are you practicing that and cultivating so that when you then get on your coaching calls and your clients are in a tizzy because they have their own things that they're, opening up and bringing to the table, can you ground that conversation? Can you really help them entrain to your energy of a very grounded, safe, clear space so that they can do the work that they need to do from that place of safety? Because when we're doing deep inner work from this very chaotic energy, we receive different things. So
when we're holding space from that chaotic energy,
that
we receive really different things.
Yes. And we want to just be aware of where that leaky energy is.
Yeah, for me, like, as the amount of work I do in the world now on all the space that I hold, I really have to make sure that I'm spending a great deal of time in my self-care practices, in my alignment practices, because the lesser space I hold for those things, really the lesser space I'm holding for myself, and then I am in a state of reaction versus creation. And that's always kind of what I'm checking in with as a person who's running a big business. It's like, okay, am I in my creator energy today, or am I in my reactor energy? And sometimes I'll wake up and I'm in my reactor energy and it's just a harder day, like you have a bad dream, then you wake up, you get a message, you're pissed off, this happens. And so I just try really hard to have those boundaries, to really wake up and start my day with that intention of like, I am the creator of my life. And I think when you have these tools like hypnosis, NLP, time techniques, everything you're teaching in the Psyche certification, you know, it's not just about coaching others, it's about coaching yourself. And at the end of the day, we have that responsibility to coach ourselves enough to this place to say, yeah, I see why I'm avoiding myself. I see why I'm not making time for myself. I see how this is causing my world to be. And like, maybe, yeah, what are the beliefs around that? Like, why am I not making space for myself? But ultimately, we do need to come to a better place of prioritizing our creation energy and putting ourselves first.
Absolutely.
For sure.
And one other like thing I wanted to like loop close, something we were talking about before, is just like, as we are growing in entrepreneurship, as we are expanding into these, you know, able to hold greater capacity, as we expand into these new levels of abundance, it's not that there aren't going to be challenges. It's simply that through this practice of energy cultivation, of shifting beliefs, of really learning how to entrain into the desired frequency that you want to be in, when you are presented with problems, you have the tools, you have the skills, you have the experience, the practice to navigate them with more ease. It's not that they're easy. I remember actually a mentor of mine, he was running 2 different masterminds that had different income levels, and he asked his team, what do you guys notice is the biggest difference? And so the team had been there for all of the events and everything, and they said, you know, the biggest difference, it's not the problems. The problems are literally exactly the same, whether it's a business making $100,000 or making $7 million. The biggest difference is that the people who are making $7 million, when they get feedback, they don't argue for their limitations. When they get feedback, they go, got it, great, done. And they're like, we didn't know what to do because those events were so short because the hot seats were 2 minutes instead of people trying to push past the 15-minute mark, because they got the lesson, they received the feedback, and they were in that practice of solving problems and were very grounded in clean and clear energy. So that it's not that, oh, they make $7 million so they know this. It's they know this, and so that's what's allowed them to expand into those new levels.
Yeah. I kind of wonder, like, that just makes me think, like, because I see that all the time when people argue for their limitations, right? What does your webinar say about this? Subconscious coaching secrets.
Yes.
What does the webinar say about people who argue for their limitations?
We're gonna, you might have to wait and see, guys. We'll loop you on that.
Yeah, so before we close, why don't you talk about that and just let the community know what you have in store for this webinar?
Yeah, so we have a beautiful training coming up that you guys can come and join live called Subconscious Coaching Secrets. And through this training, it's going to be live, and you're going to learn how world-class coaches facilitate rave-worthy client breakthroughs and get paid abundantly to do it. And I think one of the biggest challenges for people is they're trying to DIY it and they end up spending years just second-guessing or under-delivering and feeling like, is what I'm doing enough? And undercharging when they're just still trying to figure it all out. And so in this training, we're really going to be stepping into 3 key secrets. We're going to be talking about how to unlock the #1 secret to create world-class coaching offers that have clients accelerating their results and coming back to work with you again and again. Number 2, how to confidently and ethically coach anyone on just about anything so that you can amplify your work in any niche and in any industry. And number 3, we're going to talk about the 6-step Psyche coaching session framework so that you have the framework to facilitate transformational breakthroughs that your clients will want to tell everyone about, something that you will feel so clear, so clean, so energetically aligned with running. So yeah, we have that. We will link all of that up for you in the show notes if you would like to come and join me live on this training.